from ABC7 Chicago. What happens if federal agents defy court orders? Experts weigh in. Well, they're too terrified to put the real headline up on ABC7. But the actual statement made by their journalists is federal law enforcement have defied the courts in using riot control munitions in Chicago, which may or may not be true. Doesn't matter. Liberals in Illinois and in these jurisdictions now are operating under the assumption that Trump is defying the courts. Let me play this news report from ABC7.
What happens if federal agents refuse to follow court orders? And the answer isn't good. Allegations this weekend of federal agents not following rulings from judges prohibiting certain crowd control tactics, and questions today over potential unlawful arrests. During an interaction with immigration agents in Northwest Side Albany Park Sunday, video appears to show agents deploying tear gas against the public without any audible warning, something that is unlawful under a court order from last week.
Leave them alone!
Immigration agents outside of a church in Rogers Park Sunday during a Spanish-language mass. Questions tonight over whether they had warrants targeting specific people or were there without warrants, something that requires additional probable cause and an assessment of an immigrant's flight risk.
What we have seen now on a much larger scale is federal agents indiscriminately stopping and arresting individuals without warrants and without probable cause required by federal immigration laws.
A fence still up around the Broadview ICE facility restricting access to a public road tonight after a judge ruled it should be taken down. The deadline to do so is tomorrow night. But what happens if federal agents refuse?
I am very worried about where we are right now. We are on the precipice looking into the abyss of chaos. If somebody says the judiciary makes a decision and then the executive branch ignores it, that's chaos.
Former federal prosecutor Ron Safer says federal judges can rule according to the law. But if the executive branch, in this case federal agents, refuse to follow those rulings, judges don't have an army to enforce their orders.
Normally, judges enforce their ruling by contempt orders, and then the person who is violating the order is fined or imprisoned if it's bad enough. How do you do that to a cabinet level official? And who is going to enforce that?
At that point, the Constitution and American norms require the executive branch to enforce itself, something Safer is skeptical the president will do.
Let's just put it this way. We got about another minute to play, but let's put it this way. There are law enforcement officers at the Broadview facility, which is southwest side of Chicago, being instructed to remove the protective barrier that is keeping them safe from violent extremists, rioters, following, over the past several months, terror attacks on several ICE officers and DHS. A judge has now ruled the fence must be taken down by law enforcement, and if these cops do not remove it, they will need to be arrested by law enforcement. So answer me this. Which law enforcement division is going to arrest other law enforcement officers, the federal level, for protecting themselves from terrorists? Does anybody think it's reasonable that if I go to FPS and say, a judge ruled that what CBP did is illegal, you go and arrest them? What did they do? They put up shields and barriers to protect themselves from violent extremists who are trying to kill them. They're going to say no, because then when we try to protect ourselves, we'll get arrested too. So we're not going to do it. Let's just roll the rest of this tape.
It is norms that presidents will respect the decisions of the courts, that they will respect the views of the governors. That's out the window. And that is going to create and is creating crises on the streets and in Washington and across the country.
Now, the I-Team reached out to ICE about the incident in Albany Park. We have not heard back, but whatever party is in power, the courts are the answer for potential government overreach. But the enforcement doesn't come from the courts. If you're talking about the federal government, it comes from the federal government itself.
So right now we have, once again, to reiterate, There have been a series of terror attacks against ICE over the past several months, some with people hiding with long guns and opening fire, 2 incidents. And now you have these ongoing and sustained riots. You have numerous instances in Chicago where people have rammed DHS vehicles, potentially trying to kill these ICE officers. Just today, as we covered in a previous segment, a CBP vehicle was rammed by illegal aliens. They pulled a pit maneuver, fled, and then a crowd formed and began lobbing rocks at these police. A court told these cops to remove their protection. By tonight, it must be removed. If the cops do not remove it, they are subject to contempt from the courts. How does this country function when a judge says to a police officer, effectively remove your armor?
I mean, and what is the possible rationale for that? Well, I mean, we know why he did it. It's because the police are his enemy and people breaking the law are those who he wants to protect. I don't think there's any other rational explanation for it. But what's the pretext? What was his argument from law?
The pretext was that it blocks streets that ambulances need to run through, and that therefore wasn't legally put up by the state. That's what their argument literally
okay,
is.
so the fence around their facility is they're arguing it would prevent emergency services.
Correct. And like fire trucks and ambulances and things like that.
And other riots.
I think what's actually going on is pretty obvious. When the ICE facility in Portland boarded up their windows, the city ordered them to remove it, citing a zoning violation.
Yeah.
What they're actually saying is, we will use the power of bureaucracy so that you are forced to expose yourselves because conservatives keep playing by the rules.
That's right.
They keep saying, like, we must abide by the laws and the rules. Even Trump was just ordered by a judge. He's allowed to federalize the National Guard but not deploy them. How does that make sense? He's allowed to assume command of the National Guard, but he can't give commands to the National Guard?
Makes zero sense.
Makes zero sense. But Trump keeps saying okay to unconstitutional acts by judges. Why is it? How does this country function when one political faction says we will abide by all rules, unconstitutional or otherwise, and the other side says we won't?
Well, and this is the crux of the entire immigration issue. For literal decades, what the left did is they intentionally failed to enforce laws that were already on the books and that people voted for with respect to immigration. And now that the country's been flooded with tens of millions of people who don't belong here, they want to cite every minutia of the law when it comes to removing those people.
Because they don't care about the law.
Yep.
They don't have principles. Principles are a tool to use against you.
Yep.
They do not care about the law. They only care about the exercise of power. Whatever argument they make, they will make the opposite argument tomorrow when it is convenient. It does not matter what the law is. They only care about exercising power. And like most of the people that'll make arguments, they don't even understand, like, if there's an end goal. They just know that they've been told that the right is bad, and so that they should just say whatever they can to stymie the right.
Exactly. They're team
living
bad
in
guy.
a fantasy land. I mean, quite literally, will do anything against logic and reason. Doesn't matter. It's chaos.
I think it's worth talking about how the Democrats and the left have set up a permission structure to permit them and their activists and protest siblings to obstruct legal law enforcement from doing their job to such a degree that the right has become way too comfortable with. So we're seeing Democrats around the country encourage activists and protesters to obstruct DHS activity at their different court hearings and at different CPB areas where they're having their processing facilities. They're blocking the gates in which their DHS vehicles are escorting different illegal immigrants that they've detained and literally obstructing their duties, but they're not really being arrested for it, and I think that's a serious issue. These aren't just, random activists that are doing it. It's elected Democrat officials that are getting in the way. Yeah. So, for example, in New Jersey, there was this this freshman rep, LaMonica McIver, who was not arrested, I believe, charged for assaulting an ICE officer. In New York City, we are seeing Democrats like Brad Lander and Jumaane Williams obstruct at immigration courts in New York City where DHS is trying to arrest illegal immigrants.
And you've witnessed this, right?
And I've witnessed this multiple times. And it's such that they're describing them as, again, Nazis, fascists. They're not, in their language, detaining and arresting people. They're kidnapping and disappearing people.
That's right.
And using this rhetoric gives their activists and protesters the permission structure to say, when we obstruct this activity, it's actually a good thing. So I also think I saw Democrat. She's running for the House somewhere in Chicago, Kat Abuzagala, and she was also obstructing the gates and encouraging others to obstruct the gates outside these ICE facilities. And I don't think this is a sustainable thing. I don't think DHS can continue to allow these protests to happen outside of their facilities because they pose a legitimate threat and obstruction to what they're trying to achieve, and a non-legal one. And we're also seeing different police not collaborate with DHS in their communities. So when protesters protest outside this Chicago ICE facility, they're forced to deal with it by themselves. And you don't see the Chicago Police Department defending ICE or the ICE facility.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.